Welcome back. My name is Cameron Moffatt, and you are watching Choices. If you're like myself, it's very easy these days to get confused on what we should be eating, how we should be eating, and when we should be eating. And today, we're hoping to address that confusion with somebody in the show who has some expertise in this field. Quite often, I find that people are becoming slightly afraid of food, and that's really not to our health benefit. So, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Suzanne Brett. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Suzanne is a registered holistic nutritionist, and today we're going to find out the difference between that type of designation and other types of designations you'll hear of often in the field. Maybe that's a good place to start, Suzanne. What is the difference between a registered holistic nutritionist and, say, a dietitian, or simply the designation of nutritionist?
Well, first of all, mostly they deal with the Canadian Food Guide, and I don't.
Okay, so let's come back to that in a little bit. Okay.
I mostly focus on the client themselves rather than the disease or the symptom that they're dealing with.
Okay.
So I might do something like start at the core of the problem, or go back to their childhood and do a little bit more detective work and see where things are really where the problem was really starting to arise for them. We might look at more things, metabolic issues that they might have, or underlying disease.
Now, what do you mean by a metabolic issue? How would that present itself?
Well, let's say, for example, they're dealing with weight gain.
Okay.
They might not consider a hormonal problem or a thyroid issue, for example.
Okay.
And so that's something I might look at, and I might use other modalities to get in there and deal with the problem. Whereas a lot of dietitians and nutritionists are trained, and this is general, a lot of them use other practices as well now, but for the most part, they're just looking at the disease and the symptomology and treating it like that instead of
So
going
that's
into
why
the
I guess your term
details.
holistic nutritionist comes in, that you're looking at the whole.
Yeah.
And that certainly seems to be the way that a lot of modalities are going now. I mean, you think of TCM and you think of nutrition, DOs now, like myself, and also doctors of naturopathic medicine. They're looking at the whole person.
Exactly.
That seems to be the better way to go.
It's basically the differences between Eastern and Western medicine practices.
Okay. All right. So what got you into this field originally? What brought you into it?
I've always loved food. I think that's where it started. And not in abundance or anything. I just was really passionate about different types of food and not eating what everyone else was eating. I kind of wanted to be different. And then I had a sort of coaching ability that came naturally to me as a child and as a teenager, and an intuitive way of sort of dealing with people. And I think that just coincided when I brought the two together and decided to go to school for it was counseling and food, and what does that mean? And that was holistic nutrition and being a consultant in that way. And my mother was sick when I was a teenager, or before I was a teenager, when I was about 9 or 10, and she really transformed her life through food, and she really changed her diet, and I think that was a little bit eye-opening for me at that time. And yeah, I was a vegetarian really young and really experimental with stuff like that, and made sure I got the right amount of protein in an intuitive way. So I like to share that with everyone else.
What's your opinion of all the diets? I mean, if we look over the last 10 years, I can count probably 10 different major diets that have come through our culture.
Yeah.
And not every one of them, but many of them are saying opposite things. So if someone comes into your office and say, look, I've got this problem, and I've tried these, and these diets, how do you address that? How do you approach that person?
Well, it depends on the person, and sometimes I'll just ask them why they were attracted to that type of diet, and what their main health concern or goal is, and sort of start there, because I really don't do diets, I guess. I mean, I do a diet that's specifically meant for the client themselves. But the general diets, like the paleo diet and the Atkins diet and things like that, I try and steer away from, because I really want to make sure that my clients are eating what they need to eat. to heal themselves at that time in their lives, or to prepare themselves for whatever it is that they're planning.
So then if somebody comes in and seeks out your services, they've come in for their first appointment, and they've now got, I would assume, some kind of eating or general nutritional plan?
The first appointment is an initial consultation. It's 75 minutes long, and it's actually more of a discussion, and that's where a lot of the detective work comes in. I go through a full health history and family history of the client, and we talk a lot, so I get a feel for what they really want and what's really coming through for them and what's really important to them. And then also I get a feel for where things may have started and where the problem arose in the first place.
Okay. And then how do you monitor the progress over the sequence?
That's with the follow-up consultations. So 45-minute follow-up consultations where we review their progress, and I'll give them, after the initial consultation, they'll have a few basic things to go home with. Not a lot in the first
It's easy
session,
to overload people, isn't it?
you don't want to overwhelm anybody. But then they'll come back in the follow-up session, and I'll ask how those basic things went for them, and I'll get an idea of how to hold them accountable, and where the patient compliance lines are with them, so I can know how much to load them up with.
So you're looking at then, I gather, a decrease of the different symptoms that they would have come in with initially, or weight loss or weight gain or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, whatever it is that they're looking to, like if they're dealing with disease, say they're dealing with cancer, for example, I'm looking for initially a general feeling of well-being. So they're feeling a little bit more energized over the first one or two follow-ups. And then we're looking into more details with their medical practitioners. Is the tumor decreasing and that kind of thing? Yeah.
We were talking about this question before we went on air. The idea of someone just going to a bookstore and getting a book on nutrition. I've had people say that to me as well. Why don't I can just go to the bookstore and get a book on stretching, for example, or how to improve my back. Why would you tell somebody that they may want to come and see you as opposed to going and getting a book or a DVD or and of course online nowadays too, there's so much available.
Yeah, there really is. I often tell my clients not to go online for the first few sessions that I'm with them. If they're feeling overwhelmed, if they're coming to me saying, I've read this and I looked at this and I really don't know what's good and what's bad anymore, and I feel really confused, then I tell them to stop entirely until they get more of a sense of what's good for them, and they'll start to understand more of what I'm talking about and what direction they need to go in for themselves. I really believe that people would rather come see a person that is holding them accountable for their goals and really keeping them in line, and someone that they can trust and have a relationship with, rather than just reading a book. And reading a book and looking online is amazing. There's a lot of really great stuff out there, but it can get really confusing. And I think a lot of people get really overwhelmed and they start to believe everything that they read. And they think that everything is good for them, and what's good for them isn't necessarily good for their neighbors. So they'll read something amazing and it might have worked for them, and then they'll go and tell their neighbor that it worked for them, and their neighbor won't have the same results because they're not the same person.
Is there one type of person or one type of symptoms that you typically see or you more often see in your practice?
Oh, stress. Stress is the biggest.
I see that in my practice a lot now too, and I'm starting to think that really our society is becoming very stressed, and it's starting to show up a lot in our bodies. And nobody in mainstream medicine is really addressing that I've ever heard of lately anyways. And it's taking its toll on us. Stress, folks, we've got to start dealing with it somehow. So what do you do for that, or how do you help that person?
Well, it's really tough for people to go to their family doctor and say, I just feel crummy, and I'm tired, and I have no energy, and my digestive system isn't working exactly how I want it to, or or I have insomnia even, but it, they can sometimes get somewhere with that, but if it's just a general feeling of discomfort and
malaise and fatigue, they
don't really get very far.
Okay.
And so they feel frustrated after numerous times of being turned down. Often that's when I start to see that's when I see them.
Okay.
And they've come to me because they're frustrated with their family doctor or whoever else they've been seeing, and they want some results.
They
want
better.
Someone to say, it's okay, that's normal, we can fix this.
Right.
So yeah, I go through a lot of like stress decreasing techniques.
Examples of those?
Breathing techniques. I recommend lifestyle changes, and sometimes a body, mind, spirit, general sort of connection, and mindful eating practices are really helpful for that. I almost always go over that with clients because I find it's really important that they know how to eat properly.
And it's surprising, isn't it? In a culture where we have so much food,
yeah,
and we have very good quality food here on the island as well too. It's unfortunate when people are eating in a way that they're just not able to assimilate the nutrients in that food.
Assimilation,
you can't drive down the road with your cell phone going and eating your organic salad and expect to get much nutrition from that salad. It is not going to happen.
Exactly. And I tell people all the time, you're eating 3 meals a day, sometimes snacks in between, and you're expecting all those nutrients just to somehow magically get into those cells and process normally through your digestive system. But really, everyone is eating in front of the TV, while reading a book, while driving, in front of their computer at work.
Mm-hmm.
And the focus isn't on the food anymore.
Right.
And it's not on the nutrients involved, and it's not on, learning how you can really change your digestive system.
I went on a 10-day meditation one time that was silent, and you only had 2 meals a day, and the last meal of the day was a very small meal, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose a lot of weight.
Oh,
and in that silence and that quiet of eating, just out of curiosity, I weighed myself before I went into the retreat. I weighed myself coming back out, which is something I don't normally do, and I actually gained 2 pounds.
Yeah.
In just being able to eat mindfully and absorbing it. It
Yeah.
was quite phenomenal. So back to the stressful situation, the person coming in with stress. Do you find that stress is often showing up in their dietary system, in their digestive system, I should say, or is it weight gain, or how does that stress show up physically?
It's different for most people. A lot of times it'll be an allergic reaction, an inflammatory reaction.
Inflammatory, outright allergies.
Yeah. Skin irritation or a lung congestion. Even little things where I often look at, because traditional Chinese medicine, you look at the eyes, the tongue, the nails, the hair, the lines on the face.
Sure.
So I sometimes look for things like that, and I can really tell when someone's having an allergic reaction sometimes there as well. So there's that, and I think that they really, it's a lot of the digestive system. It's a lot of weight gain and a lot of the digestive system.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for people then that do have digestive issues, one of the things they may want to look at initially is how much stress do I have in my life, and how am I handling it?
Yeah.
And is it too much or too little?
Okay. And how am I eating?
And how are you eating? Now, what do you mean by that? How am I eating?
So I'm talking about chewing your food.
Okay.
I'm talking about eating in a calm environment, breathing, slowly eating, and the intention behind the food that you're eating. So knowing where your food came from, I think, is really important. Having a relationship with it. Really connecting to it so that you can sort of understand a bit more of like the nutrients that might be involved that you're actually putting into your body and what that might do for you.
Right. So for somebody who goes out and actually picks their strawberries on an early Saturday morning, comes home and eats them, I'm sure there's a different feeling of that than just getting a little package from California.
Exactly, yeah.
And gobbling them down.
Even just cooking your own meal. You cook your own meal and you feel a sense of gratitude.
Are you able to help people, or do you refer out to somebody who can help them learn, people who maybe have forgotten or not on how to cook an actual meal properly?
Yeah, I do some cooking classes and some classes or workshops. I work a lot with parents, family planning, and with children. So I do some workshops with the parents on how to feed their children. And it's actually really cool when I tell people to watch their kids eat, and they really understand that sort of childlike behavior when it comes to eating. You know, I don't want this, and they throw it on the floor.
Right.
And, you know, I love this, and they really chew it, and they really love it so much.
You'll be happy here. I just took a Northern India cooking class, and so I'm now cooking a lot more Indian food at home, which the spices I find are amazing to work with.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I use Indian food a lot of the time for resetting the body when it's out of balance.
Why is that?
Well, things like, well, actually not just Indian food, but some like khichdi, for example.
Okay.
Just a really well-cooked like rice with vegetables and lots of anti-inflammatory spices.
So that would help calm the inflammation down in the gut.
Yeah.
And then start the nutrients to be reabsorbed. Okay. Is there anything else that you use in the way of foods like that?
Well, every food has a purpose, and every food has certain nutrients that are good for different things. So I always use, food is medicine.
Sure. Sure. What about fermented foods?
Fermented foods, I always, especially with digestive problems, I'm always encouraging people to use fermented foods or fermented beverages and using them with their meals.
Okay.
Just a small bit of fermented food with a cooked meal, or even on a salad, or
Wow. So really somebody could come in and after a series of 3 or 4 treatments really reset their dietary patterns with you, couldn't they?
Yeah.
And that would be quite a strong skill, a strong set of skills to have at home, especially with children, to pass that on to the children.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Suzanne, thank you very much for coming on to the show. I hope that everybody tonight got some ideas on how you can start to use food as medicine and actually reset your dietary health, and an extension of that, really, your mental health as well.
Absolutely.
And even your relationships with people around you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And how long have you been in practice?
2 years now.
2 years. And you're in Victoria?
I'm in Victoria. Well, I've been at this Absolute Therapy in Victoria on Oak Bay Avenue for not even a year yet, actually, probably about 8 months there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sure what you've shared with everybody will be of value.
I hope so.
Thank you for watching Choices, folks. Next show, we're going to be on location at one of our local cafes, where we will be watching one of the cafe owners produce grainless brownies. So for those of you that are trying to get away from carbohydrates and reduce the amount of carbs, this is certainly an interesting way of making very delicious snacks without using any grains. We'll also be having on the show after that somebody discussing Body Talk, which is a energetic manual way of resetting the patterns in the body. It's quite interesting. So until next time, thank you very much. And on behalf of all the crew here at Choices, we thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoyed the show and found it of some benefit and use. Until next time, stay healthy, and thank you. My name is Cameron Moffatt, and I appreciate you watching. Bye for now.